Rugby League Back Chat is sponsored by TotalRL.com. Hello and welcome to this week's Back Chat from the Pit Sports Bar in Leeds. It's the last one this year, so we can make all kinds of outlandish predictions and we don't have to care because you won't see us again until next year and you'll have forgotten by that point. Right, let's find out who the panel this week, and as ever, a fabulous panel we have as well. Martyn Sadler from League Express newspapers, from the Times newspaper, Chris Irvine alongside us, and lifting the handsome ratio by a considerable distance is James Ford, who's not only the head coach of York City Knights but also the League One Coach of the Year. Congratulations on that terrific award. Right, lots to talk about. We'll start with the semi-finals because that's imminent, and the Dream Team as well. We might dip into to the Dream Team, but the semi-finals, absolutely mouthwatering, Chris. We've got Wigan against Cass, which is unpredictable, and to a certain extent St Helens against Warrington as well.
Yeah, it's all on. We finally got there. God, it's taken a long time, hasn't it, after these Super 8s, but we're finally at the semi-final stage. I think looking at Wigan Cass, after all that happened to them last year and all that kind of collapsing in the final, they're going to be up for this game. Wigan have been fabulous during the Super 8 series and they're very, very consistent. But I've just got this little sneaking feeling that after what happened to Cass last year, that maybe they can get across the line. Of course, Saints have the wood over Warrington this year. They've beaten them 3 times, and you've got to fancy them. But look, it's anybody's. I think it will be a St Helens Wigan final, possibly, but Castleford maybe coming up in the rounds.
You're producing 3 out of 4.
3 out of 4.
Wow, you're a brave man.
Just a thought occurs to me that both Castleford and Warrington have been given great motivation this week, haven't they? Because neither side has got a single player in the Dream Team.
Yeah.
So there's a lot for them to prove. I think.
Who would you put? Which Castleford or Warrington players would you have put?
Well, I'd have certainly thought about McShane for Castleford. I think
Roby?
he's been absolutely outstanding.
Above Roby?
Possibly. I mean, pretty even contest there.
I had a Cass in the vote because all the journalists who vote, and I'm hands up here. I had a Cass player in. My Cass player in was actually Oliver Holmes. I thought he deserved a place.
Yeah.
But
there are several players who came near, but I think the point is that none were in. So I would be very surprised if they weren't using that as motivation. Come out and show.
Who are you putting for Warrington? Who would you put in?
Well, Chris Hill obviously is the obvious candidate from Warrington, and Mike Cooper. I think Mike Cooper's been very good as well.
Who's unlucky not to be in the England squad.
Yeah, and absolutely. Neither of those players, But no, I think Warrington. They've been going under the radar a bit. They've often failed to shine at crucial times this year, Warrington.
Yeah.
But this is the game now, isn't it? This is the one where they've got to shine or not. And I think a lot of people would be shocked if Saints didn't make the grand final. I mean, 7 players in the Dream Team in their case, but it's unpredictable. Who knows?
James, are Castleford more robust this year? Are Castleford better equipped in some ways this year for a grand final than they were last year?
Well, you're probably asking the wrong person because obviously, I'm a Castleford supporter and I'd love Castleford to get to the grand final and win it. I've got a lot of close friends at Castleford. Obviously, Greg Minnikin's there, and I'd love to see him pick up the grand final winners medal. I think they had to deal with a lot of adversity last year, and they'll probably galvanise them and made them stronger mentally. And obviously, Darryl had to make some changes through the year, and he's shown his what a quality coach he is once again to come up with some of the signings that he's done and the positional reshuffles that he's come up with. And I certainly wouldn't write Castleford off. They're a side that can score tries from anywhere on the field, and obviously with Matauti out full back, they'll look a real threat.
Yeah, I think their spine is better than it was last year in the grand final, James. Because I think with Matauti at full back, I think that strengthened them a lot.
In the grand final, possibly.
Yeah.
In the grand final, possibly over the season.
They had Greg Eaton at full back in the grand final, of course, which weakened them on the wing.
Hitchcock's a quality player, and Greg Eden's certainly a different type of fullback to Hardacre. Greg does some really exciting things, for his side, and can come up with some things that are exciting against his side as well. But overall, in the balance, I'd say he's a quality player, and but I'd agree with you. I'd probably say Castleford are maybe a little bit stronger this year.
And they've flown under, like Warrington, they've flown under the radar. I think that's a good thing to go into that thing. The expectation is on Saints the expectation is on Wigan, and we saw that at Castleford, the Castleford St Helens semi-final last year, where it went down to the golden point.
Absolutely.
And Luke Gale's
probably the match of the season last year.
Was
actually,
absolutely fantastic, and I think it's going to be that tight in these games.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what's impressed me about Warrington is the Challenge Cup. Being in a Challenge Cup can very often define your season, can't it? To lose the way they lost in that emotional game against Catalan, the way they bounced back has been fantastic in the last few weeks.
Yeah, well, I spoke to Endo the other day actually about Warrington and their season, and overall in the balance of it, they've had a good season. They're in the semi-finals, a chance of making the final. They made the Challenge Cup final, didn't go the way they wanted it or the way a lot of people maybe expected it to go, but they're making good progress. And I know everybody keeps saying it, but it could be Warrington's year, and they are a big club. There is some expectation there, and it is looking like they are getting better at dealing with that expectation.
By the law of averages, this is our year. The Warrington fans say every year it's going to be 1 year, isn't it?
Well, they've got to win the Super League title 1 year, surely, Warrington. Because they've been such a great club for a long time. They've done well in the Challenge Cup, won it 3 out of the last 10 years. But it's about time they did win the title. But it is difficult to see them winning at St Helens.
It's a sign of their progress, Martin, this year. Remember last year they were down in the qualifiers, and Steve Price has come in. I think engendered a new feeling. There's a new, it's essentially the same. It's not that much different in terms of squad, and they have made massive strides.
He's done a really good job, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Price and Endo, obviously both in as a duo, and as you said, there's a lot more energy and intensity and purpose to what they're doing, and again, they're a side now that you enjoy watching, when maybe that wasn't the case last year.
And bear in mind, this weekend, if it doesn't go well for Saints, it could be Ben Barber. Well, it will be Ben Barber's last game. So everybody's assuming that his last game will be at Old Trafford. But on the other side, Stefan Ratchford, who's just won our Albert Goldthorpe medal this year, so been incredibly consistent during the year at Stefan. But again, he's been a bit under the radar. But I think players like that are going to be really anxious and keen to rise, to overcome some.
There was some interesting analysis by Iestyn Harris on a different platform ahead of the 2 semi-finals, when he actually got it wrong because he thought Leeds might give Warrington a better game than they gave them. But he said the problem with Warrington at the moment is that this group of players hasn't won big games and don't necessarily know how to win big games. I don't know how you get that knowledge without actually winning a big game. But do you get that, James? Do you get that maybe Warrington lack a little bit of an edge because they haven't won big games? Well, St Helens have been there, Castleford have been there, Wigan have been there in the last few years. Is that unfair on Warrington? Yeah,
I think it's probably a little bit unfair on Warrington. You probably take each game as it comes, and on its merits as well. And Pricey and Endo will prepare the side as well as they can, and I'm sure there'll be a real relaxed but confident vibe around Warrington coming into their semi. They are a big club. They have got some world class players. And I don't think there'll be any anxiety around their squad or their club. Why would there be? You sit in the dressing rooms and look at some of the personnel in there, and that's got to breed confidence.
Yeah. Is it good for the game if it's Cass Warrington in the final? Because he guaranteed a different winner. Is that necessarily a good thing for the wider image of the game?
Personally, I think it would be, because we've had this system now since 1998 in terms of grand final, and we've only seen 4 winners: Wigan, St Helens, Leeds and Bradford. And Bradford last 3 of their victories in 2005. So 3 clubs have dominated this thing for the last 13 years. Yes, personally, if we've got a different winner and we can see that kind of spread of winners, I personally think it would be good for the game. So if it was a Castleford-Warrington final, everything to be rejoiced in. But I have to say, from St Helens' perspective, having lost a semi-final as badly as they did to Catalans in the Challenge Cup, to then go and lose the game on Thursday really would represent unbelievable underachievement after the way they dominated and won the league leaders.
I mean, I don't know whether that's going to weigh very heavily on St Helens, but you think
I think
it might
will,
do.
Martin.
You think it might do, wouldn't you? There's the pressure is definitely on, isn't it?
But that's the system we've got.
There's no doubt about it. But whereas Castleford, I think Castleford going to Wigan. I mean, the thing about that game is that I think Wigan are the team that really does rise to the occasion, time after time after time. And of course, it's Sean Wayne's last game perhaps, or last 2 games coming up. So Wigan, it's hard to see Wigan not rising to the Castleford challenge. But again, what I was saying earlier to James, I do think Castleford are better this year. For example, at halfback, they've now got Jake Truman. Partnering.
It's a big game
Luke
for
Gale.
him, isn't it? It's going to be
a big game. But let's not forget, last year in the Super 8s, He played only his second game for Castleford and scored 3 tries before half-time at the DW Stadium when Castleford won 38-20. So, you know, he's a young man who isn't overawed, I don't think, by the big stage.
When you watch him play, you know, for somebody so young, he just looks so calm and composed, and even if he does come up with an error, it doesn't seem to influence, you know, his next 5 minutes or the rest of the game. You know, I've been really impressed with what Jake Truman's done. Obviously, I'd heard a fair bit from his agent about how good he could be, and on this occasion, I think he's got it right. He really has been a great find for Castleford.
And was it on his debut that he scored 3 tries?
No, it wasn't his debut. His debut was against St Helens.
You're not listening to what he says.
Sorry, Martin.
Listen, he'll have you in his office later, which sounded completely wrong. Anyway, to get back on to matters, we could have, I mean, it's ifs and buts and maybes at the moment, but we could have a grand final that sees 2 young kids up against each other in opposition, with Richardson on one side and Truman on the other. How do you rate them together? I mean, Richardson's slightly older because he doesn't count for the Young Player of the Year this year because he's slightly older, but obviously Truman is in the running for that.
I think it's a really exciting time to be an English Rugby League fan. You know, from what I've seen of both, the potentially could kick on and become, you know, absolute, you know, stellar players in Super League
and
beyond. Well, that'd be great. And but there's not only those 2, is there? There's some other young kids at St Helens that have really caught the eye. You know, the Thompson, the Matty Lees. You know, I watched him the other day on Sky, Matty Lees, and I think he's probably my favourite player now. And how he carries the ball and his intent to whack people. It was great to watch.
Yeah. It's hard. It's too hard to call. These are too hard to call.
Well, I think so, but I suppose you must have been optimistic at one time of getting Jake Truman on loan from Castleford, presumably.
I've sent Darryl a few overly nice messages in the last 18 months, just trying to win my way in there, but
it's just been too good in Super League, of course.
That's 2 big matches coming up this weekend. We've got 3 big matches this weekend. Let's touch on the other one. And who'd have thought this 10 years ago? Toronto against London for a place in Super League.
In its way, it's surreal, but it also, I mean, for expansionists and those who love the thought of expansion, this is a fixture to really kind of rejoice in, isn't it? I mean, Toronto Wolfpack versus London Broncos, once again knocking on the door of Super League, 4 years after their relegation. But Toronto, if they were to achieve this, from nothing to Super League in 2 seasons, is little short of extraordinary. They are going to be favourites going into that game, and I think it's just indicative of where the sport needs to go. The sport's at a crossroads anyway. And this is perhaps where the sport needs to go if it wants to thrive. And I think it's a really important game.
And that result, I mean, let's not let that result go under the radar. Toronto winning at Leeds. If you'd have said in that 2015 season when Leeds won the treble, actually within 3 years' time, a club called Toronto will come and win it.
It doesn't now exist.
You'd have just said, you're ridiculous.
1 million. I think you'd have got 1 million to 1, wouldn't you? Probably. And it's just fantastic. And it was thoroughly deserved on Saturday. I mean, it wasn't just that Toronto won the game by a single point, another incredible Gareth O'Brien drop goal, incidentally. But if you look at all the stats related to the game, they were better in every department. You know, they had more meters, they had more clean breaks, more offloads. Fewer errors than Leeds. So, you know, on the stats, they should have won by a more convincing margin. But, you know, it was great for them, and Leeds didn't really look to be totally, you know, motivated for that game, I thought.
It was like it was like watching the unknowns, Toronto against Leeds, the unrecognisables, because they were frankly awful in that game.
I mean, it would be quite amazing if London did upset them now. I mean, their destiny looks to be in Super League next year.
It seems
Toronto,
to be.
Doesn't it?
There's a bit of a philosophical argument going on Twitter, if ever any philosophical arguments ever take place on Twitter. But one is, which would be best who deserves to be in Super League the most? Toronto, because of the excitement, the North American angle that they bring, or London, who are actually producing some good players, some good young players coming through. So which of those do you think would benefit Super League the most?
First of all, Dave, Twitter, how good's that? It's superb, isn't it? But it's a tough question to answer really, because obviously I work with Jamie Langley with the England Academy, and I've been really impressed with what the quality he's got, and you can't fail to like, you know, Danny Ward and the job he's done down at London, and for them to come back from where they've been and be knocking on Super League door just shows what a job Hendo did before, and obviously they've carried it on, and it'd be great to see them in there. But Toronto, as you said, starting from nothing and coming through League One and then steamrolling the Championship and being able to beat Leeds away, which is a difficult ask. Just shows what a good job Brian and Paul Roll have done over there. And
the excitement factor as well. I mean, you witnessed this as a club last year, didn't you? When you met them in the final round of matches, so there was no planning in terms of promotion of the game beyond 2 or 3 weeks, and yet you got one of your biggest crowds because it was Toronto.
Yeah, the club did a really good job. But I know there's some people on social media quite negative towards clubs like Toronto, but they bring much more than away supporters. There is that excitement, there is that ability to market at the game. It's broadcasted across a much larger audience, and the progression of the game is bigger than just a couple of hundred away supporters.
They're doing some great things at Toronto like that, and I think this weekend's game is actually on Canadian Thanksgiving Day or something.
It is, yeah.
Which is a really nice coincidence, and I think they're the sort of club that will exploit that and draw an even bigger audience. I'd be very surprised if they didn't get a capacity crowd this weekend. But the other thing I was going to say about London, there's one quite trivial reason why I'd like to see London in Super League, and that's because of the smile quotient. Danny Ward, I think he's terrific. Whenever the camera pans onto him, he seems to be smiling. Most of the coaches look grim, to be honest, but Danny looks as though he's really enjoying it. I just think that's great.
Don't knock the trivial. This is a programme that's built on trivia, and if you think Chris Irvine's been smiling, trap wind. We'll see you again for part 2 in just a few moments' time. Rugby League Back Chat is sponsored by TotalRL.com. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of this week's Back Chat from the Pit Sports Bar in Leeds. Our panel today, Martyn Sadler from League Express newspapers, James Ford from York City Knights and League One Coach of the Year, and also Chris Irvine. You could be Championship Coach of the Year next year, you do know that, don't you? But that's another 12 months away. Right, just going back to this Toronto stuff, because we were chatting about it a lot in the break, and I think it's still really interesting stuff. I don't think people understand. When Catalan Dragons won the Challenge Cup, I don't think people beforehand knew how much of an impact that was going to cause.
Absolutely.
And I think Toronto, people have got an inkling, but getting into the Super League, I don't think people understand how big an impact that could have.
No, I don't think they do. I mean, the Catalans is an interesting example, isn't it? Because they were in Barcelona a week or two ago, parading the Challenge Cup at a Barcelona FC game at the Nou Camp in front of 73,000 spectators, and the upshot of that is that they've been invited to play Wigan at that stadium sometime in 2019. Wigan obviously are keen to do it, and it looks as though it will go ahead.
I think the RFL have said yes.
And who knows what the ultimate impact of that might be. I mean, it's a tremendous opportunity for rugby league to broaden its base, and the same's got to be true of Toronto. I think the city of Toronto is getting behind the club in a quite remarkable way. I mean, James knows more about it than I do because you've been out there, and sadly I haven't yet. But I just think for people to say that anybody who says Toronto being in Super League is not the right thing to do, I think is just crazy.
Yeah.
To
I mean,
be honest.
London have a say though. Can you
Can
see them giving them a game? I mean, I think Toronto's first loss this season was at London,
Absolutely.
and London smashed them, didn't they?
London are a quality side. They've got some outstanding individuals who can win games on their own. Jared Samet, Kieran Dixon, and they've got some really good players who I'd call really good, grafters, teamwork players. People like Eddie Batty, and they're a serious challenge for Toronto on the weekend, and I'm really looking forward to the game. I'm sure it'll be a phenomenal game, and there's a lot at stake, and both sets of players will be showing how desperate they are to win a place in Super League.
Yeah, because I mean, if it is to be London and not Toronto, that is still a big boon for Super League in terms of the bigger footprint on the map.
When London went out of Super League, that was the kind of fear. We don't have that London presence again, which we'd had for 19 seasons in Super League, and then I think we have missed. Look, whoever comes up, I still think it's a win-win for rugby league. To have a London presence back in the top flight would be enormous, and I think with the club as it's constituted at the moment in London, they would do well, and I think Danny Ward and a lot of the players there would bring a lot to Super League. Toronto is a different dimension again, and I think it will be a question in Canada if Toronto do come up of selling the importance of Super League, that you are going to be in that top flight and the importance of it. It's in a sporting city. Reminds you of Melbourne in a certain way. It's very much a sporting city with a lot of competing interests, but a successful club seems to be gathering some momentum. Somebody sent me a Canadian paper the other day in Toronto, and the Wolfpack were on the front page in terms of their game and winning. They've been a winning club. It'll be difficult for them in Super League, but I think I think it's a win-win. Whoever wins this game for Super League.
Well, the thing about whether it's going to be difficult for them in Super League, I think it's probably worth bearing in mind that David Argyle is probably the richest guy who owns a rugby league club, I would imagine, and probably money's no object for him in terms of recruiting players from all over the world, you would imagine. So,
is recruitment going to be a difficulty though, because whoever comes up is on the short time scale. A lot of business has already been done. So what scope are they going to have? And same for London to actually recruit.
Well, I think David's probably got the finances to pay transfer fees if necessary.
Yeah.
And if he suddenly takes a fancy to any leading Super League player or NRL player, you could probably, give the financial incentive for a club to release a player. So, who knows? It's difficult to say. I mean, the other interesting thing about Toronto is whether Paul Rowley stays on as coach, because there have been some rumours that Paul might be, might fancy, doing something else. But I think Argyle is very keen to keep Paul on. But again, if Paul didn't stay at the helm of Toronto, who would they get instead? Well, Brian McDermott's presumably on the market.
Well,
presumably so.
Former American coach, so he knows the territory.
And is the most successful Super League coach in history.
Ask James this one, because you've been through.
He's going to be the coach of Toronto next year.
Are you putting your hat in the ring?
No.
But you've been through that with York as well in a competition. Is there advantage to Toronto in playing this tranche of away games? So they can't play physically at home. You cannot play there until May because of the entry conditions. Do you think that will give them an advantage in Super League, or not, or a disadvantage?
Well, I think it'll vary, because obviously the travel when you go out there is an issue. Obviously, I think it's an 8-hour flight. So if you look at the research on recovery times from that in terms of what's it called, bloody.
Give us a clue.
Jet lag.
Jet lag.
Yes.
Jet lag. That's the one.
No, it's a
long way from York, isn't it?
They say it's a day per hour, so that's a big issue for teams to deal with in terms of getting their preparation right for that game. But obviously Toronto will face that as well, if they're travelling as well.
So when you went and you played over there, what was the biggest impact? Was it being over there to play the game, having travelled, or did you get the bigger impact the week after?
Well, a bit of both really. We kicked off in English time. I think it was about 12 o'clock at night. Obviously our sleep had been massively disrupted due to obviously the time difference. But when we came back and I had to go back to work as well, I remember walking around college and students asking me questions, and I know I didn't know what day it was, didn't know who they were, and thankfully I got through it without getting myself in too much trouble. But I think we dropped on in terms of the fixtures the week after. I think we had a side near the bottom of the table, so I made some changes to the side and tried to freshen it up, and we weren't at our best, but we were good enough to get the win.
Yeah. Okay. Prediction time. 3 matches this weekend. Well, there's more than 3, because we've also got the playoff game, haven't we? Bradford against Workington this weekend. Wow. I'll ask you about that in just a second. But you can sit back and just rub your hands with that one, Kate. And of course Lee against Featherstone, also. But the 2 semi-finals. Who's going to win the 2 semi-finals? Who's going to win the £1 million game?
I think you've got to go for the favourites in each case, Saints, Wigan and Toronto. I mean, the question is which of the other teams is most likely to cause an upset? And I would say Castleford.
Right.
Definitely.
Okay.
Not Wigan.
This is a rarity. I'm agreeing with Martyn.
Right, okay. You're smiling again. James, what do you reckon for this weekend?
I'm going to have to go with Castleford.
Yeah.
I don't think Greg would speak to me again otherwise, and St Helens. I think that'd be a superb grand final to see them two go at it again.
Yeah. £1 game?
Toronto.
Yeah. And what about the playoff game, Bradford against Workington? You're up, you won it. I think Bradford were expected to win it this year, but you did it instead, so well done. But this game, it's a tasty game, isn't it? Leon Price's Workington against his old Bradford team, John Keir in charge. How do you see that one going?
Yeah, there's certainly lots to be excited about. If you look at the league table, which often doesn't lie, Bradford have won considerably more games than Workington this year, so you'd have to say they've been consistently better than Workington, and will go into the game favourites. But Leon's shown that he's very capable of getting his players up for big games, and his team have shown that they've got what it takes to beat Bradford.
Twice this season.
Twice, yeah, and they did us a huge favour by doing so. They did what we couldn't. They beat Bradford twice, and we can only manage to do that once. And so Leon's doing a remarkable job up there. If I had to bet, obviously you would never bet on rugby league as a coach or player or anything like that. No, you certainly can't. Yeah. I'd probably have to think that Bradford will go into the game favourites, and I would think that they'd win. But it'd be great for Leon to get a third scalp.
Yeah, and that championship again next year is going to be great.
It's
You've got York
going to be
coming up to
fantastic.
vibrant, and possibly Bradford coming up, or at least one of the
or
Cumbrians.
Working. I mean,
Yeah.
if Working came up, that'd be pretty good. I mean, I think you're right about Leon Price. I think he's shown himself to be a really shrewd coach in his first year. And you would like to think that he's going to have a long career as a coach that probably will culminate in Super League with somebody or other. Perhaps like you, James. Hopefully with York, but maybe even with somebody else. But Bradford can't bank on this game, can they? And it would be
Well, they get
ironic.
another chance, don't they?
They would do.
They
now,
get to
is it?
play Swinton.
Swinton, They would do. And
The form's very good though coming into it, isn't it? I mean, to beat Oldham, was it 47-0?
Oh, incredible.
Yeah.
So Oldham are a really good side.
Yeah.
We played them twice, and we won by 2 and 4 points. We came off the field thinking, crikey, they are a good side. They're really gritty. And for Bradford to 47-0.
I think John Keir's the best performance of the year.
Wow.
John Keir knows how to prepare a side for a big game, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Let's face it. He's done that all his career, as far as I'm concerned. So it would be very surprising if Bradford weren't at their best against Workington. And you would think in that case they'd win reasonably comfortably. But there's just that Leon Price factor, I think, that just adds an imponderable to that game.
Yeah.
And I'm reluctant to bet against Leon because I admire him, a great deal. But you've got to say it's against the odds, isn't it?
Yeah. I'd like to be around the Bradford camp this week. Obviously, John's famous for his motivational strategies and how he pulls people together for big games. It'd be great to see that, wouldn't it, and observe it and be taken along with it, because I've got a lot of respect for John. He's done amazing things in coaching, and I really would appreciate having a look at that.
We're with him Friday night, I think it was last Friday night, and said to him, what about this weekend? And he just looked at me and he went, "We will win."
Nice.
and the very first time we saw that look was in 1998, Sheffield Eagles, when he was on the pitch beforehand, and he was talking to a colleague of mine and said, "We will win today." Colleague David Oates came and went, "Kiri thinks they're going to win today." Of course they did win today. So.
The other thing as well, and obviously James is York a part of this dimension. You look at that championship next year, Bradford potentially going back in the championship, Widnes are going to be part of that championship, and it's going to be a top 5 playoff to actually get promotion. Little shout out for the late lamented qualifiers already. The qualifiers have been absolutely terrific, particularly this year. Every minute has mattered, the old mantra. And I'm going to miss those. But that top 5 championship playoff next season, with the goal at the end of automatic promotion, is terrific. And there's a lot of good teams in there. That's going to be a battle royal in the championship.
Well, there's a bit of restructuring going on at Featherstone at the moment. Lee, who knows where they're going to be because of the financial problems they seem to have. So those are 2 of the big clubs, aren't they? And Sheffield used to be up there. Halifax are going to be licking their lips next year. York and Bradford or Workington.
Well, it's worth bearing in mind, isn't it? The last time the Championship had a grand final, I think it was 2007, wasn't it? It was Castleford and Widnes at Headingley, and the crowd was over 20,000. I mean, that's what we've been missing, I think, for the last 10 years or so. And I think that's going to be tremendous. Hopefully York might be in it, James. So, we'd love to see that sort of an event for the championship, and I think that's going to be really crucial for the championship because we're all talking about a new television deal coming up for Super League, but there's also got to be a new TV deal for the Championship. And if the Championship can run a grand final with, near to 20,000 people being at a ground like Headingley or wherever it might be, I think that's going to be a real great, a great piece of action that TV companies will find eminently broadcastable.
Yeah.
So, I would hope there'd be a significant deal on the table from somewhere for the Championship in the years from 2022.
England squad. Right, England squad announced this week, 24-man England squad. What have you made of it? 5 potential debutants, Tom Johnson, Reece Lynn. That's a bolt from the blue, isn't it, Reece Lynn? Has that surprised you?
It's a surprise in one way, but not in another, considering obviously Callum Watkins is injured, and there is a problem. We've had this problem at centre for some time now. So Mark Percival is the automatic there, and Lynn could well get a game because he's the only other specialist centre, unless you're going to put a Jake Connor or, God forbid, John Bateman, I've got fantastic respect for, as a wonderful second rower. Please don't put him in the centre.
Yeah,
Wayne Bennett,
playing where he plays best.
Playing where he plays best.
Wayne, just listen to Chris. Just listen to Chris. He knows what he's talking about.
So Reece Lynn, though, deserves his call-up. I mean, Wakefield have featured fantastically in the Super League Dream Team, and obviously with the likes of Tom Johnson coming on the wing, they've done really well. That England squad reflects form. It really does reflect form, which is good to see.
It's your team, Wakefield, and arguably their third best three-quarter is in the England team. I mean, you're going back to the days
I'm a strict neutral these days, Dave, but yes, certainly I was brought up watching Wakefield.
But you're going back to the days of Poynton and Fox when you'd have that kind of depth in a Wakefield team to get in an England selection.
Well, 5 Wakefield players went on the 1962 Great Britain tour, and and most of them played in the test matches too. So those were great days, and the great days are returning for Wakefield. There's not much doubt about that, it seems.
Yeah.
Hopefully a new stadium coming up before too long. Although that's a sort of waiting for Godot type situation, isn't it? But no, I think Reece Lynn, I mean, I was surprised to see Reece Lynn's name there, but having said that, I've not seen enough of him this year to be able to really comment on his form. And you've got to say, presumably Wayne Bennett has seen enough games of his to put him in there. And as we were saying, Reece Lynn and Mark Percival are the 2 specialist centres in the squad. So I hope that both get picked there, because I'm a great believer in picking specialist players for specialist positions.
Do you see him cementing a place? Do you see him getting in the team, Reece Lynn, from the squad?
He's certainly got the potential to be in there, sitting on the fence. I personally think that Wayne will stick with John Bateman. He's had opportunities to try other people in that position. He seems to like the solidarity and the defensive robustness that John brings. Reece Lynn, I think, is an exceptional athlete. I know you speak to the Wakefield players, they talk so highly of him and what he does for them coming out of yardage and play the balls that he wins and the strike that he gives them on the edge. And it'd be good to see him have an opportunity at that next level. You don't know, do you, until you ever go at that level.
Yeah, well, there's lots more to talk about as far as this England squad is concerned, but we're right out of time in part 2, and we'll see you again for part 3 in just a few moments' time. Rugby League Backchat is sponsored by TotalRL.com. Welcome to the third and final part of this week's Back Chat. Not just this week's Back Chat, but this year's Back Chat. We'll miss you. over the winter months. But we were talking about England before we split for that last little break, the selections. We talked about the two Wakefield boys. There's 3 other debutants in there as well, James. We've got Luke Thompson at St Helens. Wow, what a fantastic season he's had. Joe Greenwood made a real impression since he's arrived back in this country with Wigan. But Adam Milner, I mean, great for him, because he's kind of reinvented himself, hasn't he, over the last few years, and he's an 8 out of 10 performer week in, week out. Yeah,
he's been great, Adam, for a number of years for Castleford. Obviously, Darryl moved him to loose forward, and he brings a lot of intensity in defence. Really puts himself about. He's very aggressive, and he's got really good skill as well. So Castleford like to play through their middles and launch attacks, and Adam's got really good handling, and Sean O'Loughlin's a superb player. And he's been an amazing player for a very, very long time. Ultimately, at some point, he's going to have to retire. I'm assuming he's going to have to retire. Yeah. Sorry, Sean.
He might be 53 when he retires.
Well, and Adam Milner could be a great option to replace him.
Yeah. The pack, Martyn. You're interested in the pack. What this England pack's going to be? McShane unlucky not to be in, because Roby's not in because he needs an operation. So McShane unlucky. But then you look at Clark and Hodgson, and you think still 2 very good hookers.
Well, I mean, it's a real. I think the pack is a real problem area in terms of the quality of players who are going to have to be left out.
Yeah.
Because you've got the 3 Burgess brothers who you assume will all be there in some way. Elliot Whitehead. I mean, I would have a back row of Elliot Whitehead and John Bateman. I think that would be tremendous.
Yeah.
The hooker, I suspect that Josh Hodgson will probably get picked ahead of Darryl Clark. But it's and Joe Greenwood, I can see him probably not making the final squad, but coming pretty near to it. I mean, it's a remarkable thing for him. At the start of the year, he couldn't get in the Gold Coast Titans team. He was playing in the Queensland Cup, and now he's in the England squad. So it makes you wonder how on earth he couldn't get in that Gold Coast side.
Yeah.
But I just think the Kiwis. The factor with this series is that Michael Maguire is coaching the Kiwis. Now, Michael Maguire is obviously going to come and want to make a massive impression, and he will have that team prepared and really honed, in my view, to come and take us on. So I think it's going to be a tremendous series.
Yeah.
But most of these series are won in they always say the pack wins the game, and the backs then decide how much you win by. So if the pack can take on what's bound to be a big Kiwi pack, then I think we'll win the series. I think we should do.
Sign of the strength in depth is that you've got a potential England front row in Cooper, McShane, and I've forgotten the other guy's name. Scott Taylor. Sorry, Scott. You've got a potential starting front row there that isn't even in the 24. That shows you how strong the pack is.
Yeah, I mean, we've been strong in the forwards for a long time. I think we've got a little bit more depth, if not at centre, we've got a bit more depth than we've had in the backs as well. So I think we've
even the halves. I mean, we're struggling for halves for generations.
Yeah. No, but
and now we're looking at that and we're thinking which of these 4 are going to play.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously Gareth Widdop, who's been the kind of constant, is not going to be there. But you look at Luke Gale and Johnny Lomax and
George Williams.
We've got some real
and Jake Connor, of course,
and Jake Connor, who I'm a big fan.
Super sub in Denver.
Absolutely fantastic. But we're going to face a very different New Zealand side. They've picked a very, very strong squad for the series, and you're right, Martyn. Michael Maguire is going to have them absolutely up there, and I think New Zealand are going to be a massive test, a really good test for us as well. But I'd like to see us win and win well. But I think the pack is where we have particular strengths, particularly through the 3 Burgesses and James Graham. They've been the constants for a long time, and they're going to be keys to us. But Luke Thompson, I think, is a really exciting arrival. He's been brilliant at St Helens this season.
I think Luke Thompson's got to be on the bench at the very least.
I can see him having good game time. Actually, I think he's going to have game time.
Surprised Cooper and Taylor not in? Or is that just simply down to you can't get them all in?
Well, yeah, you can't. Obviously, you're going to pick so many players. I think it just highlights what these guys have been saying, how strong our forward pack is, and I'm also really excited to watch Luke Thompson. Yeah. It reminds me in many ways when I was a little bit younger, watching Sam Burgess. You turn your telly on to watch him, and some of the devastation that he'd cause. And I'm not saying Luke Thompson's as good as Sam Burgess yet, but if he keeps going in the environment that is in at St Helens, he could be a really exciting prospect for England.
And it's good that we've got that kind of that production line, isn't it? Because you know, we seen we had the Morleys and the Peacocks, and we thought, oh, who's after them? And then we did get people after them. So it's good that production line's going on and on.
It is. I mean, we need it in the backs now, don't we? You know, it's interesting.
What is it with centre? What is it? Because it's been a while now. When Tony Smith was the Great Britain coach, he kind of said we've not got depth in centres. What is it about centres in this country?
Well, I suppose we presumably recruit a lot of centres from the NRL to play in Super League. I mean, I've not checked the situation in its entirety, but it's just that at any point in time you're going to be stronger in some positions than in others. And for quite a long time now, centre seems to be the position where we can't really afford players to be injured. Like Callum Watkins, you know, is obviously injured. But the thing is that it gives opportunity to players, doesn't it? And if Rhys Lynn gets in the side, you know, I just hope he really has a great game. He's certainly got the potential to do so.
Do you think Oliver Gildart's been unlucky to miss out?
I think probably so, but he's a left centre, isn't he?
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
So Percival's in there before him.
You, as a coach and also working with young kids as well, is there a systemic failure in our production of centres? Is it when they're kids, the big athletic players get shoved into the pack, and the clever footballers are playing in the halves, and therefore we're not developing centres as well as we should do?
Potentially, having done so myself as a coach, coaching really young people, you tend to put your more athletic, better players at 6, 7, 13, even back row. So they get more ball. I dare say Callum Watkins as a young person coming through the game might have played standoff, loose forward, second row. So he could impact on the game more, and then therefore we are missing out on developing those what I call centre skills, a little bit of footwork, change of carry, decision making in your pass, and obviously the defensive part of it as well. You're often left 5 on 3, 7 on 5. You've got to make some big calls defensively, and it is a really challenging position.
Yeah, I don't think we've not got any heritage players in this squad, have we?
No.
What about Jackson Hastings?
Well,
I mean, he's been. I mean, John Keir uncovered a Welsh grandmother, I think, so he's just one generation away from representing Wales. But he did have a great grandmother, but he did have an English grandmother.
Well, he said he'd be happy to play for England, if he was selected.
Would you go for Jackson Hastings?
Well, I mean, that came out fairly late, didn't it? I suppose the squad had already been picked by the time Jackson said that he's got this English heritage, But you never know if there are players who are have to pull out of the squad in the half-back positions. You could certainly have a worse choice than I think Jackson Hastings has been absolutely outstanding for Salford since he arrived here. And the amazing thing about him is that he arrived with a reputation, that he was some sort of an awkward devil. Bad boy.
That's how they all come over,
his media profile is been tremendous. Actually, he's said all the right things. He's been engaging, quite funny. He's just been a great character.
Yeah.
So, where on earth, that bad boy reputation seemed to be based on a fight that he had with Daly Cherry Evans at Manly.
Who also qualifies for England as well. His mother was English.
Let's get them all in, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure about, picking somebody, at such late notice when you discover they've got this heritage. But certainly it's
one to keep an eye on.
It's one to keep an eye on, there's no doubt about it.
He doesn't play in a dinner jacket, does he?
No.
I mean, he's taken it in from dummy half, and he does as many carries as anyone else on the field, as well as everything else.
I don't think he's played in a losing side for Salford.
No, 6 out of 6 they've won when he's played.
And obviously he's wanted into Wigan. It sounds like Wigan wants him as well. Hopefully he's going to stick around in Super League.
It's a bit
like Adam Cuthbertson as well. He was one who qualified and seemed to be dead keen to play for England as well.
Yeah.
But they've resisted going down that line. Bennett, interestingly, there's been 1 or 2 choices, haven't there? But Chris Hayington.
Well, he's now retired. Chris Hayington.
He's now retired.
Yeah.
But we kind of resist going down that line.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? I mean, where do you guys stand on?
Well, I think you can actually take the kind of the rugby union thing. It's like anybody, if you qualify, you're in. I've always
even
been
if you don't qualify, you're
sometimes,
in.
Yeah. I
mean,
well,
he hadn't even qualified, had he? And he got picked for England.
I mean, the Scottish Rugby Union, got Callum McClellan, didn't they, and played him in their under-21 side before he's come back to rugby league now and joined Leeds.
And all our great English cricket heroes are either Irish or South Africans. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we had Mauri Fasavalo was the first one, wasn't he? Who kind of qualified, got him in. But I don't. For me personally, there's something not quite right about it. I don't know what, and that's just.
But that's the rugby league reaction in rugby union, for example, or cricket.
This is a man who's wearing a checked jacket and a striped shirt who says there's something not quite right about it. Have a look in the mirror this morning. we were talking over the weekend about, has any player made such an impact on a club in such a short space of time? Wally Lewis at Wakefield.
Oh yeah.
But
Andrew Johns at Warrington.
In
actually,
7 games, he's made himself an absolute folk hero at Salford, is he? Can you think of a player who's had a bigger impact than that?
Well, you put me on the spot there. It's a tough question to answer. Joel Edwards did a pretty good job at York,
Right.
but on that stage, probably saying no.
Yeah.
He's had a huge impact on their Super League survival. Obviously the supporters are falling in love with him. The Rugby League media's fallen in love with him, and hopefully he's fallen in love with British Rugby League also.
Yeah. I mean, Andrew Johns at Warrington was another one, but he never reached the heights. Even the great Andrew Johns.
They didn't win the tournament. They
never reached
didn't
the
win
heights
the
that he's.
Super League, did they?
No.
With him.
No.
I mean, you had Alfie Langer at Warrington as well, who made a pretty big impact, I would say, and then went back to playing a State of Origin game while he was a Warrington player.
Yeah.
One of the few.
Wayne Bennett.
I think is he
Bennett,
probably still the only Super League player playing in Super League who's played in State of Origin?
I think so, yeah.
I think that's
that was a big Bennett Campbell, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Coming back playing for Queensland.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
Maybe Greg Inglis fancies, after what happened to him, maybe he can come over a few games.
Yeah.
Through the bad boy back door.
We'd definitely have him.
For a couple of games. We're coming towards the end of this programme, so we're coming towards, unfortunately, to the end of the series. It has been great fun, and thank you for your company over these last few months with Richard and Rod as well. I'm sure they'd like to say thanks too. But we've got awards to give out. We've got the Man of Steel. We don't know who's going to win the Man of Steel. We know the 3-man shortlist. Who's your Man of Steel? Even if not on that shortlist, would it be one of those 3? Or
it is one of those 3. My Man of Steel would be James Roby. It's interesting when James won previously. Everybody kind of went, "Ooh, not the right call. Maybe Trent Barrett should have won that year."
Were we on that?
Well, we might have been. We might have been. We might have an argument about it at the time.
There's a
story behind that for another day. But I think that he does. I mean, Ben Barber is a fantastic shout and he's been wonderful. But for consistency, leadership, setting example, that personification of the title, for me, my Steve Prescott Man of Steel is James Roby.
Right.
John Bateman, in my case. I mean, I love James Roby, and I'm a great admirer of Ben Barber, but John Bateman I just think is an absolutely outstanding player. I've never seen a player, we're talking about players who are, do exceptional things in relation to Jackson Hastings a minute ago, but John Bateman is exceptional in quite a different way. I've never seen a player who plays so much above his weight as John Bateman. He doesn't look a big guy when you see him. Even when you stand next to him, he doesn't look extraordinarily big. But his strength is quite extraordinary. And, he can burst his way through tackles from much bigger men and they don't make much impact on him. I just think I think this year he's been the outstanding player for Wigan. Every Wigan game, you look at his stats, they've been incredible. And, he is truly what I believe to be a Man of Steel. I do like to take some notice of the title Man of Steel, and that to me does imply, those qualities that...
That's based on sponsorship, wasn't it?
Well, it was, but it's still a evocative name, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I do like to think it those qualities that Bateman has are sort of Man of Steel-like qualities, really.
What do you reckon?
I do admire John's tenacity. He's a very aggressive player, and that does bring him a lot of success. But I'm a huge James Roby fan. I think we've taken James Roby for granted.
Yeah.
He's been an absolute top player, right up there with in the Cameron Smith bracket. Yeah. But he's been that good for that long. It's normal for us. Yeah. And people.
We expect him to play well, don't we?
People write him off. We have got a lot of good other ruckers, and they're often championing those guys. But James Roby's been outstanding for 10, 12 years, and it won't be the same to see a St Helens side without him in it.
Yeah. Well, for what it's worth, I reckon Ben Barber. And this was an argument. This was an argument we had when Jamie Lyon won it that year. Yeah. And the argument was, who will you remember 2018 for? When you're looking back on 2018, who's the star that really stands out? And he might have, dipped a little. Maybe he's coming back, but for me, Ben Barber has lit up the season.
Sensational at the start, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. So,
but we said this about players before. Why did
Kieran Cunningham never won? Kevin Sinfield never
won.
But
Kieran Cunningham suffered by, unfortunately, in the Schoolthorpe years when it was just such a rich field to choose from. But the player to me who has lit up Super League for me, like few other players, Leslie Vernicolo never won it either. Yeah. So it's and I think Barber's been tremendous. We will remember him, but I just don't think there's been that consistency which Roby and Bateman to me have. But you know, it's in the gift of the players, and we'll see who gets the award.
Minute to go. Not championship. Super League Player of the Year. Super League Coach of the Year, even if we get the lines right.
Super League Coach of the well. It's very hard to look beyond Justin Holbrook. Hard to look beyond Justin Holbrook.
Right.
But you know, McNamara's been outstanding as well, and you know, you've got to say Chris Chester again has been great. You know, there are a lot of potential candidates.
Okay, one name. No, just give me a name. Holbrook. Who are you?
Steve McNamara.
Steve McNamara. Right, we know who the League One Coach of the Year is. He's sitting here. And we know that that's the end of the programme. If you want to find out what's happening on this channel, don't forget to go to our website. There it is, www.freesports.tv. What a great series we've had. We've really enjoyed sitting here every week chatting about rugby league. Thanks to all the guests, our 3 here today, but all the guests that we've had over the series as well. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we hope to see you again next year on Back Chat. Until then, goodbye. Rugby League Back Chat is sponsored by TotalRL.com.